He executed the men who tried to kill Hitler, then met the same fate himself. July 1944. Inside Berlin's Bendlerblock, General Friedrich Fromm stands amidst the chaos of a failed coup. His chief of staff, Claus von Stauffenberg, has just tried to assassinate the Führer. Before dawn, 4 officers lie dead by firing squad. Months later, Fromm will join them. Friedrich Wilhelm Waldemar Fromm was born on October 8, 1888 in Charlottenburg, a district of Berlin, then part of the German Empire. The son of a modest civil servant, he entered the Prussian army as a cadet in 1906, beginning a career shaped by the traditions of discipline and hierarchy that defined Imperial Germany. When the First World War erupted in August 1914, Fromm served as an artillery officer on the Western Front. He was twice wounded and decorated for bravery, an early signal of the competence and loyalty that would mark his rise through the ranks. After Germany's defeat in 1918, the Treaty of Versailles restricted the German military to a small, professional force known as the Reichswehr. Fromm, among those retained, continued to build his career through the lean years of the Weimar Republic. He became known as a capable administrator rather than a frontline commander, precisely the kind of officer the restructured German army valued during its secret rearmament. By the early 1930s, as Hitler consolidated power, Fromm's precision positioned him well within the growing Wehrmacht. When war erupted on September 1, 1939, Fromm was appointed Chief of Army Equipment and Commander of the Replacement Army. It was a post of immense influence. The Replacement Army, based largely inside Germany, managed training, conscription, and the flow of replacements to frontline units. It also controlled domestic garrisons and reserve formations, troops that under certain circumstances could be deployed inside the Reich itself. Fromm's authority extended over hundreds of thousands of soldiers and vast industrial reserves. After the early victories in Poland and France, Fromm's administrative command ensured the steady flow of men and materials that kept German armies advancing. On July 6, 1940, he received the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, one of Germany's highest military honors, recognizing his role in organizing the war machine that had delivered such swift success. Yet behind the accolades, Fromm remained a staff officer, not a battlefield leader. His power lay in logistics, procurement, and control of personnel. As war dragged into its 3rd year, cracks began to show. As Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941-42 consumed men and equipment at unprecedented rates, Fromm warned of shortages and urged a defensive strategy to stabilize the front. Hitler ignored him. The replacement armies struggled to keep pace with losses exceeding 500,000 men in the east. Fromm's reports increasingly conflicted with the Führer's demands for total war and absolute victory. Still, Fromm was no outspoken opponent of the regime. He maneuvered cautiously, seeking to protect his command and avoid confrontation with the Nazi leadership, particularly with Heinrich Himmler's growing influence over the army's internal affairs. His pragmatism earned him survival, but also suspicion from both loyalists and would-be conspirators. When 1943 arrived, he stood at a crossroads, an efficient, well-placed general surrounded by officers who had begun to dream of Germany without Hitler. The man who managed the machinery of replacement would soon find himself entangled in the machinery of rebellion. As the summer of 1944 unfolded, Germany was collapsing on all fronts. Allied forces had landed in Normandy, the Red Army was sweeping westward, and morale within the Wehrmacht was sinking. In Berlin, the Bendlerblock, headquarters of the replacement army, became a quiet hub of conspiracy. Here, officers like Claus von Stauffenberg, General Ludwig Beck, and General Friedrich Olbricht plotted to remove Adolf Hitler and end the war. At the top of their organizational chain stood their superior, General Friedrich Fromm. As commander-in-chief of the replacement army, Fromm held the legal authority to activate Operation Valkyrie, a contingency plan originally designed to suppress internal unrest or a workers' revolt within Germany. The conspirators rewrote it into a coup plan. Once Hitler was dead, the replacement army would seize control of Berlin, arrest Nazi officials, and declare a new government. The key to the plan was Stauffenberg's access to Hitler and Fromm's formal power to issue orders to units throughout the Reich. Fromm knew pieces of the plot long before July 20th. Stauffenberg, his own chief of staff, worked in his office every day, using his authority and the cover of Valkyrie to prepare mobilization orders. Several witnesses later claimed that Fromm expressed guarded sympathy for the resistance but refused to commit himself. According to one subordinate, he once said, "If the bomb succeeds, count me in. If it fails, I was never involved." Historians still argue whether this was cynicism, prudence, or survival instinct. At noon on July 20th, 1944, Stauffenberg placed a briefcase bomb beneath a table in Hitler's conference hut at the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia. Believing Hitler dead, he flew back to Berlin to launch the coup. In the Bendlerblock, chaos erupted. Fromm demanded confirmation before acting. When reports arrived that Hitler had survived, he refused to join the rebellion. The conspirators, realizing he would block their orders, placed him under arrest and locked him in his own office. For several tense hours, the fate of the Reich teetered. Orders from the Bendlerblock mobilized reserve army units across Germany. SS forces loyal to Hitler rushed to retake control. By late evening, the truth was undeniable. Hitler was alive. Loyal officers freed Fromm, who immediately turned on the plotters. In a frantic effort to distance himself from the coup, he convened a summary court-martial against Stauffenberg, Olbricht, Werner von Haften, and Albrecht Metz von Quernheim. The proceedings lasted minutes. Just after midnight, July 21, 1944, the four men were taken to the courtyard of the Bendlerblock. By Fromm's order, a firing squad executed them under the light of car headlights. His goal was clear: eliminate the witnesses before the Gestapo arrived and prove his loyalty to Hitler, but it was too late. Josef Goebbels, informed of the execution, famously told him, "You've been in a damn hurry to get your witnesses below ground." Fromm's attempt to salvage his career after the failed coup unraveled almost immediately. On July 22, 1944, less than 48 hours after he had ordered the executions at the Bendlerblock, he was arrested on Hitler's direct orders. Heinrich Himmler, who had long coveted control of the replacement army, wasted no time assuming Fromm's position. The general who once commanded one of the Wehrmacht's most powerful institutions now sat in a cell. His arrest stemmed not from proven participation in the conspiracy, but from the Führer's fury that anyone of his rank could have hesitated. Officially, the charge was cowardice before the enemy, a vague accusation that in practice meant disloyalty. The same man who had executed the conspirators now found himself accused of failing to protect the Reich from them. It was an almost Kafkaesque twist, typical of the paranoid final phase of the Nazi dictatorship. Fromm's downfall also reflected internal rivalries within the power structure. Himmler and Goebbels both despised him, viewing the replacement army as a semi-independent sphere within the Wehrmacht that needed to be crushed. By removing Fromm, the SS extended its influence over training, recruitment, and armaments. In effect, his arrest completed a political takeover that Nazi hardliners had been pursuing for months. During interrogation, Fromm maintained that he had acted loyally once he knew Hitler had survived. He pointed to the rapid execution of Stauffenberg and others as proof of his allegiance, but his interrogators saw opportunism rather than loyalty. Gestapo investigators uncovered that several of his subordinates, men like Olbricht and Metz von Quernheim, had used his authority to mobilize the coup. Whether Fromm had turned a blind eye or simply failed to notice was irrelevant. The regime needed scapegoats, and his name carried weight. In September 1944, Fromm was officially dismissed from the army. His rank, pension, and decorations were revoked. He was transferred to Brandenburg-Gurden prison, where many condemned officers were held before execution. The irony was bitter. Some of those now imprisoned had once served directly under his command. Unlike them, however, Fromm was not brought before the People's Court, or Volksgerichtshof, under Roland Freisler, the show trial judge infamous for his shouting tirades. Instead, he faced a closed military proceeding whose outcome was predetermined. The proceedings concluded in early March 1945. Germany was collapsing, Soviet troops were within 80 kilometers of Berlin, and Allied bombers filled the skies daily. Yet the regime still found time to purge one more general. The tribunal found him guilty of failing in his duty and sentenced him to death by firing squad. The verdict underscored the absurdity of Nazi justice. Fromm was condemned not for rebellion, but for failing to suppress it swiftly enough. On March 12, 1945, General Friedrich Fromm was led from his cell at Brandenburg-Gurden prison. Outside, the roar of distant artillery echoed from the approaching Soviet front. Less than 8 weeks remained before Germany's final surrender. In the prison courtyard, a firing squad waited, the same military formality he had granted to Stauffenberg and the other conspirators 8 months earlier. It was a grim irony. Fromm's death by firing squad was considered a privilege, one denied to most of the July plotters, who were hanged with piano wire at Hitler's orders. Witnesses later recalled that Fromm remained composed. Before the shots rang out, he is said to have declared, "I die because it was ordered. I had always wanted only the best for Germany." Whether the words were sincere or simply an officer's last attempt at dignity, no one can say. At 56 years old, Friedrich Fromm met the same fate as those he had executed to prove his loyalty. His death barely registered in the collapsing Reich. Berlin was already under aerial bombardment. The regime was fighting for survival. His death, approved by Hitler personally, was less about justice than eliminating another potential embarrassment, a reminder of how deeply the July plot had reached into the military's upper ranks. In bureaucratic terms, he was struck from army records, his decorations rescinded, his name erased from official lists. After the war, Allied investigators and historians tried to reconstruct Fromm's role in the events of July 1944. The records were fragmentary, the testimonies contradictory. Some described him as an opportunist who gambled on both sides. Others saw a professional soldier trapped in an impossible dilemma. One recurring question persists: did Fromm know about the assassination attempt beforehand and deliberately do nothing, or was he genuinely blindsided? Historians still disagree. The consensus leans toward cautious complicity. He likely suspected, perhaps even hoped, that Hitler's death might restore Germany's sanity, but he lacked the moral courage to act. When the plot failed, he acted decisively, but only in defense of himself. In that sense, Fromm personified the conservative officer corps' fatal weakness: loyalty to the institution over loyalty to conscience. Unlike Claus von Stauffenberg, whose name adorns memorials and streets across Germany, Fromm occupies no place of honor. He remains a shadowy figure, present at the turning point of history, yet standing on no side firmly enough to claim redemption. His story serves as a mirror to the contradictions of the Wehrmacht: professional skill and discipline bound to a regime of terror, individual awareness smothered by obedience and fear. Today at the Bendlerblock Memorial in Berlin, the courtyard where Stauffenberg was executed is a site of remembrance. Visitors see wreaths, plaques, and the names of men who dared to resist. Fromm's name is not among them, yet without his order that night, their deaths might have come in even crueler fashion. His gesture, half mercy, half self-preservation, marks one of the most morally ambiguous acts in the final year of the Third Reich. If you found this video insightful, watch Arthur Neighbor, the Nazi cop who betrayed Hitler, next. A look at how another high-ranking figure within Nazi Germany's leadership met his own reckoning. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell for more History Inside. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.